Imagine you're stuck in traffic in Abuja. You check your fuel gauge and it's almost empty. Last week, you filled your tank at 900 naira per liter. Now it's over 1,100 naira. Nothing about your life changed. You didn't get a raise, your business didn't suddenly grow, but somehow fuel got more expensive and now everything else is rising with it. Transport, food, rent. So you ask the obvious question. How does something happening thousands of kilometers away end up affecting you right here in Nigeria? Nigeria pumps 1.4 million barrels of crude oil out of the ground every single day. Every single day. And yet, Nigerians are standing in fuel queues paying over 1,100 naira per liter, calculating whether they can afford to go to work tomorrow. This is not an accident. This is not bad luck. This is not market forces. This is a system carefully built, deliberately maintained, and designed to make sure the oil under your feet never actually benefits you. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how it works and exactly who is getting paid while you suffer. The farmer in Iowa, a landlocked American state with 0 oil wells, pays less per liter of fuel than the mechanic in Port Harcourt, a city built on top of oil. The average worker in Saudi Arabia, a country that also produces oil, pays roughly 150 naira per liter equivalent. You are paying 1,100 naira. In Nigeria, we've accepted it as normal. Now, a war just broke out in the Middle East. The Strait of Hormuz got shut down. Global oil prices jumped 65% in 10 days, and Nigerians felt it immediately, at the pump, at the market, in their transport fare. Nigeria built the largest single-train refinery on the planet, the Dangote refinery in Lekki, 650,000 barrels per day, more than enough to cover every liter of fuel Nigeria consumes domestically. The government created a policy called the Naira for Crude deal. NNPC, Nigeria's state oil company, would supply the refinery with 13 cargoes of crude every month, paid in naira, not dollars, naira. The logic was straightforward. Nigerian oil, processed in Nigeria, sold to Nigerians in their own currency. No dollar exposure, no vulnerability to Middle East wars, a closed loop. Energy sovereignty. So, why didn't it work? Because powerful people decided it shouldn't. By mid-2024, Dangote's team stated it plainly. They were receiving 5 cargo shipments a month, not 13, 5. International oil companies, Shell, Chevron, Total Energies, operating in Nigerian waters, were shipping Nigerian oil to a refinery in Indonesia and Rotterdam. They were offering Nigerian oil to a refinery in Jakarta before offering it to a refinery 30 miles down the road in Lekki. Nigeria has a law against this. The Petroleum Industry Act, Section 119, the Domestic Supply Obligation, states clearly that oil producers must supply local refineries before they export. Penalty for non-compliance, 50% of the value of every barrel withheld. The regulators looked at that law, looked at the violations, and issued waivers. The law existed. The violations were documented. The government chose not to enforce it. Now, the foreign companies have their own logic. They are foreign entities protecting export revenue. But NNPC, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, is a state-owned company that exists by definition to serve Nigerian citizens. NNPC was the one responsible for delivering those 13 cargoes. NNPC failed to deliver 8 of them every single month. Why? In the Bahamas, a country of 400,000 people with 0 oil wells, there is a company called Project Gazelle Funding Limited. It was created for one purpose: to borrow $3.3 billion on behalf of NNPC using Nigerian crude oil as collateral. Here is how the structure works. NNPC sets up a shell company offshore. That shell company borrows billions from international banks and hands the cash to NNPC. In exchange, NNPC repays them in physical barrels of Nigerian crude sold at a discount. The difference between that discounted price and the real market price flows into offshore accounts. Accounts that the Nigerian National Assembly cannot see, cannot audit, and cannot touch. Project Gazelle is not alone. There are at least 11 companies structured exactly like it. When you total all active deals, 213,000 barrels of Nigerian crude every single day are already legally pledged to foreign creditors before a single drop reaches a domestic refinery. In 2025 alone, the crude absorbed by these repayments was worth over 8.3 trillion naira. That never became petrol in your tank, never became roads, never became hospitals. It moved through a system designed so that even if you followed the money, the trail ends in the Bahamas. And NNPC, the same company operating this structure, announced it had purchased a 20% stake in the Dangote refinery, a stake that dropped to 7% when the government could not find the funds to pay. They could not finance their own country's refinery, but they structured $3.3 billion in offshore crude deals without hesitation. So, the refinery is not receiving enough crude, and the crude it does receive has to be purchased on the open international market in US dollars, at whatever price the global market sets that day. And then, before that fuel reaches your tank, it passes through 47 government agencies. 47. The downstream regulator, the Ports Authority, Maritime Security, Customs, Standards bodies, each one with its own fees, its own levies, its own cost embedded in the supply chain. By the time fuel reaches a filling station in Abuja, over 100 naira has already been collected, not by the refinery, not as a result of the war in the Middle East, but by government agencies and intermediaries positioned at every stage of the process. Nigeria consumes roughly 60 million liters of fuel every single day, multiplied by 100 naira. That is 6 billion naira collected daily by 47 agencies and their intermediaries. When journalists asked the National Petroleum Regulator about the price surge, the official response was this: pump price changes are purely a result of market forces. You cannot embed 47 government agencies into every stage of a supply chain, collect fees at every checkpoint, and describe the outcome as a free market. That is not a market. That is a toll road with 47 booths, and the operator at the final booth is telling you the fare is not his problem. When fuel crossed 1,000 naira, then 1,100 naira, then 1,200 naira, the presidency was quiet. No national address, no emergency briefing, no acknowledgement that millions of Nigerians were reorganizing their entire lives around the cost of getting to work. The only public words from the top came at an iftar dinner on March 10, surrounded by religious leaders. The president described the economy as being on a stable and sound footing. Here is the context for that statement. Nigeria's 2026 budget was built on a projected crude price of $60 per barrel. By March 9th, oil was trading above $110. The government was earning nearly double its projected oil revenue, while its citizens queued for fuel they could not afford. The state was sitting on an unexpected windfall and said nothing. Is fuel expensive in Nigeria because of the war in the Middle East? Partially, yes, but a conflict 6,000 kilometers away should not reach into the pocket of a food seller in Ojodu, not if a country's oil infrastructure was genuinely built to serve its people. The system is not broken. The system is working exactly as designed. Designed to extract, designed to redirect, designed so that the oil beneath Nigerian soil enriches every layer of the chain except the people at the bottom of it. The naira for crude deal exists, but not enforced. The domestic supply law exists, but waivers are issued freely. The refinery exists, but receives a fraction of the crude it needs. The revenue exists, but moves offshore before it reaches the public treasury. Every protection that was supposed to shield ordinary Nigerians from global oil shocks has been quietly removed, not by foreign enemies, but by the institutions built to protect them. Learn this system. Understand it clearly enough to explain it to someone else, because the machine runs most efficiently when the people inside it have no idea how it operates. This is not abstract economics. This is your fuel, your food, your transport fare, your ability to function in your own country. The first step towards changing a rigged system is understanding exactly how it is rigged.